Hello and welcome everyone from around the world to Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer and I'm your host for this hour. No matter how you have come across our path, we're so glad that you are here and joining us. Hope you stick around right after this brief message for our special guest speaker telling his story. We are live.
Stop Facebook.
We're a number of
The opportunity to share.
She's one of our own.
They aren't like
Parts to your story that's awesome. You found healing. You found.
until I got sober.
Can't wait for her to share the different aspects of your story and what. Awesome.
Right.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Again, my name is Patrick Custer. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm equally as glad to have our guest speaker today, Geoff.
Hey.
Here meeting with us. Hey, Geoff. So
Hey.
glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. As we were talking a little bit before this, it's so cool how we get connected through. We're states away from each other, and actually, I don't know what state you're in. Are you in Arizona?
I'm in Oklahoma now.
Oklahoma. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Very
Oklahoma.
cool.
I was in Arizona for almost 9 years, so that's kind of accurate too. I've not been back here very long. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah. What I was getting at is it's just really cool, especially during this year, how a lot of us in recovery have been able to connect, meet, socially distance, and you're one of those people that gotten to watch from afar, the blessings of recovery just be so fruitful in your life. And I'm really excited to hear about stories. Always inspire me. And I know a lot of other people as well. And, you've got such a happy, awesome, fruitful life that I know probably wasn't always in that way. Hey, buddy.
He's going to come in when he comes in.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, right on.
That's great. We got a vice president of guest speaking in the room.
I can't hear that.
So,
No.
All right. Well, with that, I'm just going to turn it over and let you start off with your story, Geoff.
Okay. Good, bud. Well, I mean, I think we all, when we get asked that, could talk, forever about, drunkalogs, drugalogs, whatever it might be. And in terms of this, I mean, my story, I like to focus more on like really how the last 3.5 years have been, because that's really been where the miracles in my life have happened. I mean, there were a lot before that. And I can see how the God that I believe in has carried me through my life, even in the worst places. But I can start from the beginning. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I'm back with my family, and we had talked a little bit about that, right? I went to Catholic private schools here. I was a good athlete. I did get bullied a lot in middle school, which really set the stage for me, feeling alone, feeling different. Like, you get to the age of 12 and everything's great. And then everybody starts to develop and go through puberty, and people just find people to single out just the way it is. And dude, I could not imagine trying to go through that in this day and age with like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and just the mass platforms for humiliation, right? The one that sticks out to me most in middle school is I would sit at these tables of like 80 kids, right? And every single one of them, when I sat down, would stand up and walk off to another table, like whole tables of people. And I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, that's the equivalent of that day and age, which is what, 1992, of posting something humiliating about somebody and having everybody see it. Everybody, because there are 500 kids in the lunchroom, everybody could see that, and I just remember feeling alone and feeling different and feeling like there was something wrong with me, and I think any of us in recovery, from the people that think they're the coolest to the people that think they're the worst, we all felt different at some point. And I really believe that's when the addictive mentality and alcoholism set hold in me, right? Because I remember when I took my first drink going into freshman year of high school, um, the fear went away, right? As soon as I had, and it was just like a little bit of whiskey at my uncle's. He was playing in a band at the VFW, and he poured some in there. And like within 20 minutes, I'm on stage singing Stone Temple Pilots, like
Yeah.
the fear of being humiliated, the fear of people liking me, it went away. And I just remember thinking, I want to feel like this forever. Like, this is wonderful. Like, I'm not scared. I did pee my pants that night. I mean, I had an experience right out the door where I'm in the back seat of his car, and I peed my pants and covered it up with his clean laundry. And so I had something right out the gate that was like, ooh, wait, this is probably not good. I didn't drink a whole lot in high school. I remember it took me years actually to get rid of that mentality that everybody's talking about me all the time. Because for a couple of years there, they were like in middle school when I would walk away from a group of kids, I would literally hear them talk about me. And like when you're 12 and 13, that sets in very deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
That no matter what you say, no matter what you do, people are going to talk about you. And I'm very high energy. I just am that type of guy. Like, this is very calm for me, because I'm meaning to be, because I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
But my energy is my biggest blessing and my biggest curse, because, when I get riled up, when I get energetic, it's what people love about me, but it's also what really annoys people. And I believe a lot of what helped me stick out was that, it's only been the last few years I've embraced that and said, somebody doesn't like it, I don't care. It is the best thing about me. If my energy's bad, I just need to stay away from people. We kind of learn. I'm 41. I've learned a lot by this point. I would not ever want to be in my 20s again. I would never want to be in my 30s again. I love where I'm at today in life because of the self-awareness that I have. So I have a lot to learn, but I can look back on that and just say, no, thank you. So then I got into college. My family dynamic. I grew up in that family. 3 kids. I have 2 sisters, a younger and an older. My dad owned a real estate company. My mom was an English teacher. I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I grew up in a family of pretty people. Like I did. Like the women, there were a lot of models that were women in my family. The guys were kind of athletes and successful, wore suits. We're all high energy. We're all A personality. Don't fail, succeed, succeed, succeed. And that's great for a lot of them, but they don't have the shame. And I can't go at a sustainable pace living that way. Look perfect, act perfect, don't make a mistake. And that's something that's taken me also a long time to get rid of. But my family's wonderful. We have our issues, but they're wonderful. We have had a couple suicides in my family due to drugs and alcohol when I was 21 years old. And that was, I didn't understand any of that at that point. I dealt with it by drinking, like I just didn't know any other way to do it. But I was in a fraternity in college. I got out in 4 years. I had a 3.7. I was president of a lot of things. I was this, I was that. And I was a total drunk on the weekends. And I realized looking back on it, I did all these things so nobody would like look at me and say, like, that guy has a problem. That guy drinks too much. Like, I can totally see it now because my resume was this long. So when I went to job interviews out of college, like, it was a piece of cake, but it was like in the big book when they talk about the achievements and the success you have, but in your heart, you don't really deserve the recognition that you're getting. And because you have a double life. And that was me in college. And that was me for a very long time. And I got the job I wanted out of college. I moved to California. I remember my best friend was alcohol because I didn't know anyone out there. I was, this naive guy from Oklahoma that moved out there, and I just drinking. I was like, sweet, I am drinking, I did really well for a few years. I started making like over 150 grand a year, 200 grand a year when I was 24. And
Wow.
it was a lot. I was selling group insurance and I did really, really well. obviously. And I was introduced to cocaine. And I can remember the night I did cocaine. Like, I remember it like it was yesterday. Like, that is probably the night that changed my life more than any other time. When I did that, everything lit up for me.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do cocaine unless I was drunk. So then I started drinking at any time I wanted just to be able to do cocaine so I could get that sweet spot, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Oh yeah.
that high and the low, the sweet spot that lasts for maybe a day and then you just get real weird and paranoid. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So that was, that was fun for a while. But yeah, about 7-8 months after I discovered cocaine, I remembered it was a Sunday night and I was playing Tiger Woods golf, listening to music really loud. I had a pile of Coke, a bottle of Jack. It's 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. I'm having the time of my life by myself. I have to be at work in 3.5 hours. So I, of course, send an email in that I'm sick. And I remember looking down and going, this is going to get really bad. Like, this is bad. Like, you like this too much. And within a year, I was waking up in hospitals, because I wouldn't stop. I'd be up 3 and 4 days. And when you're snorting cocaine, that's a lot of Coke. Like, it's just, and then when the Coke wears off, you've drank so much that you've got a 0.4 when it wears off and you're done, So I crawled back to Oklahoma. I quit the job, crawled back to Oklahoma and got into AA. And I had actually died once from seizures. So that was kind of the last point for me with that. And I got into AA and did really well. And I started dating way too early. And then I went down that path and I got a girl pregnant, which I'm Catholic. So that was about the worst thing. And that was about the most shameful thing I could think of in my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And the relationship was really bad. It was really toxic. And during that, my neck collapsed from a car wreck that I'd had, and I found pain meds, and that was at about 2.5 years sober. I started taking pain meds for my neck, but they also helped with this home situation. And again, within a year, I'm, on 300 milligrams of oxycodone a day and 100 microgram fentanyl patch daily.
Wow.
Which is like cancer medication, basically, like you're dying of cancer medication. And I got, kicked out of my pain management doctor for having other things in my system on a drug test. And overnight I went from that to nothing. And yeah, it was a bad deal. I found ways to steal pills and I ended up going to rehab again. First time I went to rehab and it just, I was never the same after all that. There's a movie called Drugstore Cowboy. Have you seen that?
No.
Matt Dillon. He goes, I feel bad for normal people because they don't know how they're going to feel from 1 minute to the next, 1 hour to the next. But I can look at a substance and I can tell you how I'm going to feel in 30 seconds. And I'm paraphrasing, but he goes, that gives me the power to get up out of bed in the morning, tie my shoes, brush my teeth, find motivation for the day, because I know how I can feel. And during that period of my neck stuff, they were prescribing me everything I wanted. And I learned how to be my own pharmacist. And the ultimate form of control for me, and I think a lot of drug addicts, is when you can control every facet of your day with a substance, you don't have to worry about anything really, because you have it until you don't, until it stops working, until you run out, or until your brain chemistry gets off. And it's not sustainable. And I never recovered from that. I did the Suboxone thing for a couple of years. This was like 2012. And then I ended up shooting up bath salts with my neighbor. I got to a point where I was just done with life again. I went to treatment after the next stuff. I got out. I went right back to work at the same place. I went right back into the same relationship. I went right back into all of it because I didn't pursue aftercare. And within 2 years, I'm so miserable. My neighbor not randomly, you know how it is when you're not doing well, bad people start to show up in your life. I had a neighbor that was shooting oxy, and I walked over and I said, I hate my life. Please show me how to do drugs like you do it. And all he had was bath salts. So I started with shooting out bath salts. That was my first IV experience. And I stepped down to meth from bath salts. that's how crazy those things were, man. Like, it was gnarly. I was green and I weighed, I lost 25 pounds in 3 weeks. And I went to Catholic school. I was in a fraternity in college. I had been in the corporate world for 8 years at that point. And I'm running around with lifelong meth heads and lifelong criminals. And, I'm not tatted up. I don't know how the street works. I don't know any of it. And I might as well have painted a big X on my back, because that world is all about getting one up on people or getting 10 up on people, or finding somebody that has a house and a car and setting them up and running them into the ground. I didn't know about any of that stuff. I had no experience with that. My drugs experience had been one dealer in San Diego and doctors. That had been my experience with drugs. So I got destroyed. And I talked about, getting bullied in middle school and how humiliating that was, and experiences along the way. And the last time I remember experiencing real humiliation was when I was running around with this guy named Baby Drop. Baby Drop, ridiculous, right? Been arrested 19,000 times. I walked into this motel room and I got jumped. I got hogtied. I got lifted up and put on a tarp. I was stun gunned and kicked in the head just repeatedly. And they said, we're going to rape you and kill you. There was a 6'7" Native American guy there. There was Drop, and then there was this girl, and they just beat the piss out of me, right?
Wow.
And I remember going, I don't care if you kill me. Like, do me a favor. I've been trying to die for 6 months now, because this was 6 months later after the first needle use. And I was like, I've been trying to die for 6 months. You do me a favor, but like, I could and do whatever you want with my dead body. But like, that dude's 6'7". I really don't want that to be my first, what experience. So I was just like, oh God. And, I ended up getting out of that situation. Some people came to buy dope, and they were like, what are you doing to this guy? And so they had to let me go. And within 20 minutes of getting out, I was shooting dope again. They threw me a baggie and said, don't tell anybody. I'm like, all right, and that was kind of normal right then. But it did scare me enough to where I finally accepted the help my parents had been offering me to go to Arizona, which is where we connected. And I went through long-term treatment at the Prescott House, which was really tough. I weighed 124 pounds. I'm normally about 175. So I was 124 and just shot out. I mean, I thought there were people in the attic at the treatment center, and there wasn't an attic, like it was just, I thought there were bodies hanging off of things, and it was just, how it is, your brain's shot out and you're fried out, and it's, just didn't know if I was coming back. But I rebuilt my life over the next, I don't know, I was sober 4.5 years out of Prescott House. I always tell people, if you think you're too good for whatever job in treatment or out of treatment, you're not. If washing dishes is what you need to do, that's what you need to do. I worked for $7.92 as a cashier at Walgreens. I had no money. I rode a bicycle for 2 years. And I'd owned 8 new cars in my life. I'd owned 2 homes, and I literally had nothing, but I was happy. I was happy just going to work and being a good employee and learning I could socialize without being high. And I got real fat. I got up to like 220. I gained like 100 pounds in treatment. So I was a jolly little fat guy at that point. Yeah, it's great. It's great. When you get off meth, your body like holds all of it. It's like, okay, we don't know if you're going to eat again. So we're just going to like anything you eat. It's, and of course it's like ice cream and cereal and just crap. And your body just holds it,
Those were my favorite foods when I got sober too.
Yeah. Of course. Were you a meth guy too?
I was my 2 drugs were Adderall and alcohol. Okay. So I was doing enough Adderall that I might as well have been on meth. So
how much Adderall were you doing?
a minimum of like 200 to 300 milligrams a day.
Yeah, that's what I was taking before I did the bath salts. I was buying or prescribed about 200 milligrams a day, and that's what I was doing too. 630s ish, so right around there. So that was my lead in too. So yeah, you're right. It's and you get real psychosis-y. You get real crazy on that too. I mean, the meth is bad, but the Adderall was. I'd polish my shoes every night and I wouldn't even wear them. It was like I just was bad.
I'm the type that I would polish one shoe and then move on to a different pair of shoes, and I do a lot of half things.
Yeah.
I know I'd start a lot of things that I did not finish.
This half of the room has been vacuumed 14 times, but this half is just disgusting. No, I get it, man. I totally get it. Or you'd like clean your windows and just clean a couple panes, and you come back and there'd be stuff on it. You're like, why can't I remember to do this?
Yep.
Yeah, and that was pre-meth. That was before meth.
Yeah, I definitely don't miss those days and nights.
No, I somehow accumulated all these vacuums because I was a real estate agent before I got into like meth and Adderall, and I had like 8 or 9 vacuums because people would leave them. And so when I got on meth, I got real good at fixing vacuums, right? And so when I went through treatment, I volunteered at the Salvation Army, and I fixed vacuums for them because I was like, I know how to do this.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I would just sit there and tweak on vacuums and get them working for them, which is very funny. But I got to use those skills. Prescott House didn't allow recreational books, and it didn't allow any kind of music. So like I would fix vacuums at the Salvation Army because I could get this little like cassette player and listen to whatever music I could find. So it was really about listening to the music more than the vacuums,
Yes, but wow,
that was funny. I forgot all about that. So from Walgreens, I start working at a bank teller. And I told the guy, I was like, you really want to put a former tweaker in a bank? Like, you sure about this, buddy? Like I told him, I was honest with him. It's like, cause he's like, dude, you have 2 college degrees. You're working at Walgreens. Like, what's going on? So like at that point, you kind of have to tell him like why you're in Prescott. And Prescott, Arizona is full of treatment people. So it's not like it's abnormal for that to come up. So that was no big deal. And so I worked as that bank teller for a while, and I went from like, 7 something an hour to 12 an hour. And that's a big pay raise when you're used to nothing, right? That's a big deal. Yeah. And I saved enough money to get a little newcomer car, like an $800, Toyota is a Corolla with like 218,000 miles on it. It squeaked. You could hear it 6 miles away. I was so grateful to have that car after 2 years of riding a bike that I did not care anymore. I was just so thrilled to get that car and not get rained on in a tie going to work. It was great. I was so grateful. I'm more grateful for that car than I was grateful for my Mercedes when I was in California. Those types of things. We get sober, and it's hard. It's hard to rebuild your life, and we're used to immediate gratification, and it just takes so much time to do it. And people get sober, and they feel like they're entitled to see their kids immediately, to have a car immediately, to have a great job immediately. And it's not that way for 99% of us. It's just not. And we get frustrated and we quit because we get entitled. For some reason, we get entitled and think, like I said, I'm starting this single father support group because the one thing I hear from guys is, my effing ex, she won't let me see my kids, and, screw her. I'm like, well, how long have you been sober? 3 weeks. I'm like, well, how long have you were on drugs, not supporting her? Like 3 years. I'm like, so you're mad at her because she's been grinding away, taking care of your children for 3 years without any money, without any support from you. And after 3 weeks, you feel like you should see your child. I'm like, you are nuts, dude. Like, and so those are the things I'm going to try to help some of these guys on, because they just don't get that it takes time.
Yeah.
You know, it took me 8.5 years to get. So I had a child. I didn't really cover that, but he was 4 when I left for Arizona. And so I just moved back to Oklahoma in July, at May of 2012 to July of 2020. So it took me that long to get back home. And, you know, I told my son, I said, I promise that I will be at least within driving distance of you at some point before you turn 18. I promise I will, you know? And so July this year, I was able to fulfill that promise. You know, when I went to Arizona, my family said, we don't want you to move back. Like, this place isn't good for you. If you move back, you will no longer be a part of this family. And I tell you, for anybody watching this, it's like going to treatment or sending a loved one to treatment. Those boundaries saved my life, because I would have left treatment. If it would have been okay for me to move home, I wouldn't have stayed, right?
Mm.
All I wanted to do was get home to Jackson and be this great father, but I hadn't been a great father in a long time. I needed every bit of that time out there to get well and rebuild my life. And over time, I had enough money to pay for trips back. You know, I got a job with Prescott House, and they paid for me to come back there and see, you know, and like leave Lincoln, my next kid, and do a bunch of stuff. So like, God gives you gifts. What I was getting at earlier is God gives you gifts along the way. Like, it's so hard and takes so long to rebuild, but there are just like that Corolla was a gift along the way. When I was fed up with riding a bike and just thought the world owed me something, God gave me a little nugget, you know? And that's what happens. You get these little nuggets, you get a little bit better job, you get a little bit better car, and those aren't the promises of the program, but when you work the program, things start to materialize, and you do know a new freedom and a new happiness. You get these little happy moments along the way that make everything all worth it, you know?
Yeah.
So I got a job with Enterprise Rent-A-Car after the bank, because I remember Will Ferrell and Step Brothers talks about Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and I applied there, and I worked my way to branch manager and did really, really well. That job taught me a lot. I mean, I was a 34-year-old trainee in a class full of 23-year-old trainees, but that was totally cool. Didn't care. Worked my way up, moved to Phoenix, stopped taking care of myself, had some surgery. I've had 12 surgeries, by the way. I've had foot, ankle, 3 knee, hip, heart, 2 neck, 3 shoulder. And so I had 2 shoulder surgeries when I moved to Phoenix, and I took another promotion 10 months later. I met a really sick female, and my life fell apart again. I let her move in. I did drugs with her. Life got bad. This was December. This was right now, 4 years ago. So, you know, within, God, it was awful. She got pregnant during the relapse, so that happened again. I lost my job because I was getting her a rental car, and she kept wrecking the rental cars, and I kept covering it up because I didn't know what else to do, because I was just trying to fight through the day to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, the last thing on my mind that I cared about was that rental car or my job. Honestly, when you're in that mode, when you're not well up here, it's a day feels like a month. It's terrible. And, you know, I'm going to work trying to hold it together, and it was just miserable. And, unfortunately, she had some substance abuse issues during the pregnancy, and I got real hopeless. And for the first time in my life, I got suicidal. And I was probably within a couple hours of killing myself. And I called my parents for help one last time, and they didn't want to talk to me, but they said, you know, we will help you one last time for this kid. I was willing to try to go back through Prescott House again. Because I knew this child, Lincoln, who you saw, was not going to have anyone if I didn't do something. And I did not get sober for me that time, because I just wanted to die. I didn't care anymore. Between losing everything again, losing 4.5 years sobriety, losing my job, losing my family in 3 months, not getting a girl pregnant again, and her using every day when I got home pregnant, I just didn't want to live anymore. I was done. And but I was like, in a moment of clarity, when I was really drunk and high, God said, go get well for this kid and I will make sure everything's okay for you. And so I did. I went back through Prescott House, had another surgery there on my shoulder. So, which was a blessing because they got to help me, with pain meds and everything. And within a year, so I graduated Prescott House December, like right now, of 2017. And 8 days out of Prescott House, she'd had the baby. We reconnected for the baby. I'd been going down to Phoenix to help her with Lincoln because I knew I was going to end up with him. I knew she wasn't going to stay stable very long. I got out of Prescott House, and 8 days later, I had physical custody of Lincoln. So, I went and picked Lincoln up overnight and moved him in with me. And we haven't looked back since, So he was 3 months old, and I was completely overwhelmed, and I was more overwhelmed with heartbreak over her, and just the shame, not the shame, just I was just more overwhelmed that like she had tried to kill herself, and it was the emotions that got me. It wasn't actually taking care of the baby because like I could get up and I could do all that, but it was just so emotionally difficult to watch her destroy herself. And that went on for a couple of years. And she got into some really, really, really bad things. And I'm on the outside with our child watching this, just saying, wow, this is the person that I really loved, that I was basically engaged to. And like, she's moving in with drug dealers. She's doing really bad things. And like, I had to let go of this hope that we would ever have a family. It was brutal. It was, letting go of her was way worse than letting go of heroin and meth and alcohol. And it was so much more difficult. Because you cannot see Adderall, you cannot see alcohol and Adderall. But when somebody else is sick, forcing their way in your life all the time, you're constant. It's like having an eating disorder. Like it's the worst one because you have to eat. So every time you see food, it makes it hard, Every time there was a visitation, every time I had to communicate with her, it just kept that wound open, and it was really tough.
Wow.
And I hit a low point about a year after that, and I was either going to use or I was suicidal again. Honestly, not as bad as before, but I was just like, this is awful. I might as well just go use. And God came to me, and I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt calm, and he gave me a plan. He said, here are the things you need to do to get out of this. And for the first time in my life, Patrick, I picked those things and I did those things. And I started to get better. Crazy thing was I got this leg infection and my leg swelled up and I almost lost my leg and went septic. And like the doctors couldn't figure out why. And I honestly believe it was like the hatred and the resentment and the heartbreak. And I think my body like manifested that because I didn't have a cut. I didn't have any reason to have the infection that I did. Like they looked, there was nothing there. So I think that I was storing so much of that inside. And as I started to feel better, like at the very beginning of that, my leg like swelled up. And like I said, I almost lost my leg. So I truly believe that's what it was.
Wow.
And yeah. So I got this job with Prescott House doing their business development, and they would, like I had Lincoln, so I couldn't travel across the country to Nashville, to Milwaukee, to all these places. I couldn't travel with him. So I would come back to Tulsa and leave Lincoln with my family, who didn't really want to talk to me very much, but they wanted to see him. And over the course of the last few years, we've rebuilt a lot of our family dynamic, but better. Like we threw out everything old and started new. And last December, they finally said, hey, we wouldn't mind if you thought about moving home. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know. I was like, all right, my motto is got it handled. I sent you some wristbands, somebody asked me once how you did XYZ. And I'm like, I don't know. I got it handled. And they said, did you say got it handled? And I said, yeah. And they go, that's really cool. And I was like, I guess that's kind of my motto, like
it's really cool. Yes.
Things just kind of happen, and from the job that I got, there's no other job I could have gotten that things would have worked out this way. There's not a job that would have worked. To being able to be there for Lincoln and getting out of treatment right on time to save him from a dangerous situation, to my family finally forgiving me after so long, to fulfilling my promise to my oldest son that I'd be back. And I came home this year for quarantine, because I didn't want to get stuck in an apartment with a 2.5-year-old, with nothing to do. Prescott's a small town. There's nothing to do there. I definitely struggle with kids a lot of times. Like I've never been great with kids. I've had to learn it, but I certainly didn't want to get stuck in an apartment for 3 months with nothing to do with a toddler. No, thank you. So we came back here, and there was a guy named Marcus that I work with now. He's the executive director of Sangha, the sober living I'm with. And he and I met in Arizona 5.5 years ago. And he and I met when I was at Enterprise, and I rented a lady a car, and she goes, "Hey, there's a guy in recovery from Tulsa in Flagstaff, which was 2 hours from Prescott. You need to meet him." And I'm like, okay. So I called Marcus, and turns out Marcus is a therapist, and he was coming to Prescott to do groups at a treatment center. And I hired him to be my meditation coach for like 2 months and teach me some Buddhist meditation practices to get better at that.
Yeah.
So that's how Marcus and I met and we don't even know who the lady is. We still can't think of who she is. So he and I met that way. And so he calls me over quarantine and says, "Look, this probably isn't enough money. You may not be interested, but here's a position I'm creating. Would you want to move back here? Because I know you're going to move back at some point. Would you want to move back early and do this?" And I was like, oh my gosh, got it handled. There it is. There's my way back right there. And Marcus gives me complete autonomy to kind of do my job and kind of do my thing. He's completely supportive of me starting a single fathers program and support groups to help single dads who are facing legal issues, who, have their kids full time, have their kids part time, or are trying to get their kids back. Like I'm finding resources and doing things to help single dads because they have an uphill battle trying to get their kids or trying to get visitation, especially if they've been on drugs. And I've been down that road. So my passion is trying to help single dads. So he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's form a program to help, single dads that have had mental health and substance abuse issues have their kids back in their life. So that's what we're working on right now. And so like this dude I met 5.5 years ago ends up being my bridge back to Tulsa. And there's a million things in between. Trust me, there's much more than that. But those are some really big things that like I consider miracles. I really do. Like there's just no other reason things worked out the way they did. And, the last 4 years has just been God showing off in my life. Like, I think having this kid, I've been so overwhelmed most days just trying to take care of him because I didn't know what I was doing that I don't plan the future anymore. I just stay in the day, get through the day, try to balance it all. And like, it's really been, a good thing for me because I'm not sitting there going, like I don't have a timeline and a pie graph to tell you what I'm doing in the next 2 weeks. I'm just like, hey, look, we're just going to play it by ear. And that's worked out pretty well for somebody like me who's always, never in the moment. Like I'm usually in the moment now because I kind of have to be. So that was a lot. You need to talk for a minute because I've talked a lot.
That's pretty cool. No, I mean, man, your story, I knew it was going to be dynamic, but my gosh, you've been through some things.
Yeah,
sure.
Crazy.
Wow, that's really cool. And I love that you might be the first single dad in recovery that I have met, and I think it's really cool. Really, really cool. Because
I've been on both sides of it. I've basically lost a kid and had to leave one, and been that deadbeat dad that does drugs around his kid. I've been that dad. I've been that dangerous, reckless dad. And then I've been, the one that's raised a baby from infancy. So it's just crazy that I'm like, I've been here and here, and I'm in a position to try to help. I really feel my vocation is to try to help guide other fathers and, get their kids back in their life and put things in perspective and give them tough love when they need to, because it's tough. It's hard, so I'm really excited to see what's going to happen from all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's keep presenting that for me that you said early on was that you referenced your energy. And I kind of love that you've been able to assess that, accept it, what it is what it is for you, and you know that it is both your best asset and can be your Achilles heel. Because you know, I don't know that I can identify with having quite as much energy as you, but to some extent I really do get that about the part of our personality that I think for a lot of us, there's, you know, that part of our personality that is our greatest asset can to some extent be our Achilles heel in the same way. And so I think it's really cool that you have harnessed that, and I feel like you're doing a lot of awesome things with all that energy to change the world for the better.
It's I always say, I mean, try to use my powers for good, not evil. Now, like, there's the dark side of the force, and I'm not a big Star Wars guy, but there's like the dark side of the force, and there's the good. I'm trying to be on this side now, rather than, you know, being a good person, doing bad things, because I know I'm a good person and I always have been, which is why I was so conflicted being this person, because and you can probably agree, because I can tell you're a good guy. When you're doing bad things, but your heart is good, my goodness, it's the worst, because you are not being genuine to yourself and you just hate yourself, because you're like, God, my heart, this is not what's in my heart at all. This is not it. You know, snorting, shooting, stealing. I'm just, oh my goodness. It's so dark, man. Like, there are people that they don't mind doing that. And I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
That's why I don't last long when I'm out there, because I just hate myself. And the only way I can deal with it is to be blacked out all the time.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. That's a really good way to put it. I mean, like the whole idea of, you know, when we get into recovery and finding out our authentic self and come into full alignment with who we truly feel we are. It's a blessing, because it's one of those things that, you know, we talk about the void, either the God-shaped hole or the void that we're always constantly trying to fill in addiction and what have you. I think you just hit the nail on the head with one of those things. You know, we've got the part that's outside of ourselves that we can't do on our own, right? And then we've got that part of ourselves that is there, but if there's not congruency with, you know, who we really are on the inside, it ends up in this toxic behavior and choices and patterns, and so I think it's all the things that you've been talking about are so good and so true. The things that get me fired up about being a sober person and continuing to work on myself, and then spreading it throughout the world.
Well, dude, you're doing awesome with this show. Like, I admire people like you that do this. There's another guy that I did a cold turkey podcast 2-3 months ago, and he does one every week. And like, I admire it so much, because I'm just like, you're really trying to put a message out in a broad sense. And I just think, and the dedication to it, and it inspires me. I've been more like, you know, kind of getting out in the community. You're doing that too, but like, that's how I've known how to do it. I haven't really known how to do what you're doing, but I'm always honored to be asked to do it. And I always admire the people that are doing it, because I just think it's wonderful. So kudos to you, brother. Kudos.
Well, ditto. Yeah. Thanks for, I not everybody gets comfortable telling their story, or, you know, gets out of their comfort zone to do it. And I do truly believe that for so many of us, I can't say for everyone. I know when I was in those early stages of recovery, man, hearing other people's stories are what gave me something to cling to for hope. And I don't know that if I hadn't had that, that I would have stayed sober. I needed to hear other people's stories regularly and, you know, hear a variety of them. It not only was useful, but it was something you took my substances and everything else away and said, hey, live with the, you know, you start doing everything differently than you're used to doing. Like, I needed some real life examples to cling to. And as we have, we have short-term memory loss at that point. Like, I needed new examples every single day. I regularly needed to be hearing people talk about their story. And and even today, like I said, I still thrive off of, I get so pumped after doing these, and talking to people like you. I get so fired up for the rest of the day.
Yeah. It's inspiring. It fills your soul, and it filled mine for the day doing this with you and just seeing your energy. And it's just, every time I do one of these, I say my cup is full, my spiritual cup gets filled, and all I want to do is go help more people for the day. And answering my phone when, I don't want to becomes easier that day. And you know what I'm talking about? Like, I tell my sponsees, I go, you don't want to call me every day, but I can pretty much tell you I don't want to answer it every day either, but I do. They always laugh. They always laugh when they say, I'm like, I don't always want to answer your call, but I will, but you don't want to call me every day. I don't want to answer, but we're going to make it work.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, so Geoff, is there, if you're doing a lot of cool stuff in your work today, and as you kind of touched on, is there any do you have any ways that if people want to connect with you, either at any specific ways on your endeavors? Is there a platform on social media or an email address that people can connect with you on, or something that you'd like to share?
I'll do, my Facebook is Geoff Patterson. That's super easy. I give out these nifty, can you see it? It's like backwards. This is crazy. I give out these cool, it's like,
it's not backwards for me. It's only backwards for you.
Okay. Well, I give out these God-handled wristbands. I give them out to homeless people, people in recovery, people that request on social media. I'm going to be doing some shirts and some cool stuff. And it's not a money thing. I just do it because it's, actually, for a while, I was getting these like Christian wristbands. They're not wristbands, Christian. They're at $10. And I wouldn't keep them more than a day or two because I would talk to somebody and I'd be like, I think you need this, and I was like, I'm spending a lot of money on these bracelets. So I was like, why don't I make some God-handled wristbands? And I get people all over the country asking for them now, which is really cool. Prison reform systems. You requested some. There's just people everywhere that do that. And then I hand them out when I'm just out and about in the community, and that's fun. So if anybody wants a God-handled wristband, they don't cost anything. You can donate if you want to, and that goes towards shirts and bands for the homeless. It just kind of goes towards shipping and different things that I'm doing for people. So you can find me at Geoff Patterson there, or you can actually look up Godded Handled, GODITHANDLED on Instagram, and I'm on there too. So I have another account, but that doesn't matter. So if you want to, that's great. GC Patterson 1979 at gmail.com. GC Patterson 1979 at gmail.com. If anybody wants to talk about issues with being a single father, any other things that I've talked about, I am very responsive. I think Patrick can attest to that. I respond immediately all the time. And that's part of my recovery program, is to be responsive. That's just how I am. If you want to talk about anything, I'm always available. Always.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right. Final thought. I always like to ask our storytellers, for that person, that man or woman out there struggling similarly to your struggle back in the day. What last thought, word of encouragement would you like to leave with that?
Sure. There's always hope, no matter what. And then tell someone. I always say tell someone, with the amount of awareness that there is out there today. When I was sitting in a bathtub, detoxing off alcohol, throwing up blood for 3 days in 2005, I had no idea about any of this stuff. None. I had no idea about AA. I had no idea about detox. I had no idea about treatment centers. There's so much available out there today. There's so much help available. Tell someone and say, find me help. I mean, you can Google it now. You can Google help right now, and it may not be good help, but you'll find something, So, I would just say don't suffer alone, man. It's just you don't have to at all.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Very cool. Well, thank you. That's some great word of advice and encouragement there. I appreciate it. And last thing I will say and add on to that is if you would like to connect with us at Promises, we've got a phone number and email on your screen that you can utilize, talk to somebody in admissions, and we'll be happy to talk with you, talk you through the potential if you might need treatment for something. And other than that, thanks everyone for watching today, and be kind to one another and take care of yourselves.